In almost any situation in the real world where someone is in trouble and needs help, the right thing to do is to help them. This is an automatic instinct for most people. If a player gets injured in a baseball game, the trainer comes running out, and everyone watching is concerned for the player's well-being. However, there is one place that is so inhospitable, so brutal in its environment, that just making sure that you yourself survive oftentimes takes priority over helping others. This place, of course, is Mount Everest, and there have been many incidents of climbers in serious trouble who needed help, but nobody was able to save them. One of these climbers was named David Sharp, and what happened to him sparked outrage throughout the climbing community. Did over 40 climbers walk right by him as he sat dying, noticing him but opting not to help him so that they could continue their quest towards the summit? Or is there another explanation as to why nobody was able to save him?
Good evening, my fellow citizens.
We will be able to work together, to pray together.
If the Japanese insist on continuing resistance, their country will suffer the same destruction as Germany.
Timothy McVeigh was arrested by local authorities.
8 climbers dead.
David Sharp was born on February 15, 1972, in Harpenden, England, near London. One of his favorite pastimes from a young age was mountain climbing, and he climbed the 1,000-foot Rosebery topping in North Yorkshire. Later, he joined the Mountaineering Club at the University of Nottingham, where he graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering in 1993. Sharp was not just a mountaineer, but an all-around lover of exploration, and took a 6-month sabbatical to backpack through South America and Asia. During his early adult years, he worked for a global security company, but also climbed many of the world's tallest mountains. Sharp was a mountaineer who refused to use supplemental oxygen to assist him in reaching the summits of the world's tallest mountains. He also preferred to climb alone without guides or assistance of any kind. In 2002, he took on Cho Oyu, the 6th tallest mountain in the world, and successfully summited. He was part of a small team during this climb, led by British climber Richard Dugan. Dugan was impressed with Sharp and invited him to climb Everest the following year. David Sharp accepted the invitation and attempted to climb Mount Everest for the first time in 2003. He reportedly acclimatized well and proved to be a strong climber, but was forced to turn back before reaching the summit due to frostbite. In fact, the frostbite was so severe that he lost some of his toes. For most people, losing their toes would instantly end their high-altitude mountaineering career. But of course, David Sharp, and all those who climb Mount Everest for that matter, are not most people. And in 2004, Sharp attempted to climb the north side of the mountain, but again was forced to turn back before reaching the summit. He was experiencing exhaustion and once again, frostbite. This time it was more severe on his fingers. Other climbers tried to convince him to use supplemental oxygen to assist him, but he was not interested. Just from studying the various climbers who have insisted on climbing alone or without supplemental oxygen or both, it seems to be a recurring theme that victory is almost impossible. Even for the strongest climbers in the world, even for Sherpas who live in high altitude year-round, attempting to summit Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen is beyond risky, and trying it alone is almost suicidal. Nevertheless, many climbers ignore this fact, and they ignore a clear message from the mountain. Stop trying it this way, or you will not get off alive. Take Nobukazu Kuriki, who went back to Everest time after time after time, always without guides or oxygen, even after losing 9 of 10 fingers, only to fail each time until eventually dying on the mountain. David Sharp was now 0 for 2, but determined to try again, and in 2006, he returned to Everest, this time to climb completely alone, without even a Sherpa to assist him. He brought only a small amount of supplemental oxygen to use in an emergency, but did not plan to use any. There were other independent climbers as well as teams who would be climbing at the same time as Sharp, so he wasn't technically completely alone, but he wasn't part of an actual team. There was no leader, and effectively, Sharp was on his own. No one had any responsibility to keep track of him, watch over him, or even help him if he needed it. Sharp did not even want to bring a radio to call for help if he got in trouble. He once again would be attempting to climb the north side of the mountain, which is the more technically difficult side, and includes the 3 steps on the northeast ridge. They are 3 steep rock barriers, the first 2 of which are very difficult to climb. This is the same route that George Mallory and Sandy Irvine likely took during their summit attempt in 1924. And just like Mallory and Irvine, nobody knows if Sharp actually made the summit because he never made it off the mountain. However, it's likely that he did make it, but much later in the day than he should have. There was no guide to give him a turnaround time, no one on the radio to encourage him to turn around. He was completely on his own. During his descent, it became dark, and he was forced to bivouac under a rocky overhang near the first step, known as Green Boots Cave, named after Green Boots, an unidentified climber whose body was used as a landmark for climbers from 1996 to 2014 when it was finally moved. He is most commonly believed to be Indian climber Sewang Paljor, who was wearing green boots the day he disappeared. David Sharp sat under the overhang with no supplemental oxygen left, arms clasped around his legs, slowly dying. He had serious frostbite, and parts of his body were completely frozen. It was around this time when supposedly over 40 climbers waltzed right by without giving the dying man a second glance. In reality, there were climbers who attempted to check on Sharp, but there was little to nothing that they could do. A Turkish team were likely the first to come across him around midnight while ascending for a summit attempt the next day. They tried to tell him to get moving, but reportedly he waved them on, indicating he was all right. Sometime thereafter, more Turkish climbers along with 2 Sherpas encountered him and tried to get him to move. They determined that he was dead or near death. He could not move on his own, and there was absolutely nothing they could do for him, so they continued their climb. Another team that included double amputee Mark Inglis and guide Mark Woodward reported encountering him and trying to get him to move, but Sharp was nearly frozen in place. According to Woodward, there wasn't even a flinch of his eyelids. I was just like, oh, this poor guy, he's stuffed. We pretty much considered that he was, if not dead, then not far off it. We all looked at him and realized he was pretty close to death and continued on. Woodward said it was a difficult decision to make, but for his entire team to stop at that altitude and try to rescue a frozen body that appeared to be dead made no sense and would put the lives of each team member in jeopardy. Other climbers also attempted to help him or at least get him to move or speak, but were unable to do so. One of them, Maxine Shaya, the first Lebanese person to climb Everest, stayed with Sharp for nearly an hour trying to administer oxygen and get him to move. He tried to radio for help, but was told to continue before he himself got into trouble. New Zealand mountaineer Jamie McGuinness said that there was a Sherpa named Dawa who also stopped and tried to help Sharp, trying to give him oxygen, trying to get him to move, also for about an hour, but he failed to get Sharp to even stand, much less walk. Even with multiple Sherpas, there was no way to carry a full-grown man down the mountain over the difficult terrain below from that altitude. There was simply nothing anyone could do. Had Sharp began the expedition as part of one of many teams who passed him as he sat dying, he likely would have survived. However, because he was completely alone, no one was there to help him until it was far too late. In fact, 3 other independent climbers also died around the same time as Sharp. One of them, Vitor Negrete, the first Brazilian to reach the summit without supplemental oxygen, had to turn back short of the summit, but made it back to base camp alive, then decided to try again, going for the summit without any help of any kind, no Sherpa, no radio, no oxygen. He made it to the summit, but died during descent. David Sharp died where he sat, and when word got out that several climbers walked by him and were unwilling or unable to save him, the press had a field day. The main story they put out there was that this day and age, most of the climbers only care about reaching the summit. They pay their $40,000 to $60,000 to do so, and that is their primary focus, not helping their fellow climbers. Even Sir Edmund Hillary, the first man to reach the summit, was appalled at what happened, saying, "They don't give a damn for anybody else who may be in distress, and it doesn't impress me at all that they leave somebody lying under a rock to die." Of course, in Hillary's day, nobody but expert mountaineers would be found near Mount Everest. A team of professionals would attempt it as a team, and as a team they helped each other. Certainly with the commercialization of the mountain by 2006, things had changed. By then, and even more so now, there were many climbers who had no business being on a mountain like Everest. who paid tens of thousands of dollars to get to the top and get that photo to share on Facebook, or more likely nowadays, Instagram. However, it has to be noted that most climbers even now are part of a team. They likely have a guide, and there are other members of the team who know their name, know their skill level, and hopefully can help ensure that they get off the mountain alive. In Sharp's case, he insisted at going at it alone, even refusing a friend's offer to join his team. He spent the bare minimum amount of money just to be able to climb the mountain, and brought along the bare minimum needed for survival, if that. Add this to the fact that the place where he ultimately died lays deep within the death zone of Mount Everest. Any other humans who passed him by were doing whatever they could to just put one foot in front of the other. And the stronger climbers who did take the time to check on Sharp risked their own lives to do so out of zero obligation to him, proving that not every climber just walked right by. Unfortunately, by the time anybody realized he was in trouble, it was much too late to do anything about it. Rescue on Mount Everest is extremely difficult at best and near impossible in the death zone. Had Sharp been a part of a well-organized team with Sherpas, extra oxygen, radios, etc., he likely would have survived because A, he would have probably been turned around before reaching the summit because of a turnaround time or his deteriorating condition, and B, even if he got into trouble, this would have been recognized much earlier and he would have gotten help to get down the mountain while he could still physically help himself before severe frostbite and frozen limbs. At the end of the day, David Sharp took a massive risk attempting this mission alone, especially as someone who had never summited Everest before. To do it with a bare-bones pack without sufficient oxygen was downright suicidal. Certainly rest in peace David Sharp, who still remains on Everest to this day. But blaming the other climbers who passed him by that day for his death, insinuating that all they cared about was reaching the top and not helping their fellow climber, may be incorrect. As explained, several climbers did try to help him, but since he could not move and was practically frozen in place in the death zone, there was nothing anybody could do for him. It was his own reckless decisions that put him in that horrible position. Unfortunately, these facts didn't matter for a climber like Mark Inglis, who faced major criticism in the aftermath for not doing more to save Sharp. His explanation made all the sense in the world. He said that Sharp was ill-prepared, lacked proper gloves, did not bring enough supplemental oxygen, and was already doomed from the time of his ascent. Trouble is, he said, at 8,500 meters, it's extremely difficult to keep yourself alive, let alone keep anyone else alive. Even Sharp's mother agreed with this, saying, "Your responsibility is to save yourself, not try to save anybody else." Even with that said, climbers did try to save him, but he put himself in such a horrible position, his death was all but guaranteed. Thank you for checking out today's video on another Mount Everest tragedy. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button and thumbs up. Check out my playlist on Everest disasters and look forward to more videos on subjects like true crime, space exploration, political science, and of course, mountaineering. Let me know your thoughts on David Sharp, whether the other climbers are to blame for his demise, or was he himself far too reckless and only has himself to blame for his own tragic death. Have a great day, and we will talk to you in the next video.